Cellblock visions set free in the penitentiary grew out of Phyllis Kornfield's over 30 years of work in prisons at all levels, from minimum security to death row. She graduated from the Philadelphia Museum College of Art, now the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and taught art through a variety of settings, from K-12 to art programs to community college. But it was her job as an art instructor for prisoners that invoked both the passion and sense of mission that continues to fuel her work in these settings today. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Phyllis Kornfield.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've enjoyed the day. So I'm going to turn my little light on. I'm sorry to put you in the dark, but the thing that matters here the most is this artwork. And I want you to really see it, see the power that it delivers. So if you will turn the lights off now. Sir. Okay. Oh, this is good. Leave it. Yes. See how much brighter it is? Can everybody hear me? So I just want to apologize up front for my cough. I will be turning away from you periodically so that I don't cough into the microphone. I have been doing this work for 34 years. It's been the gift of a lifetime. I just fell into it early on in 1983. I was living in Oklahoma, and there was a lot of support for the idea of rehabilitating incarcerated people. That word was used quite a bit, and it's hard to find it being used today. From the very first day, I have been hooked on working with this population. I've been doing it ever since, and I'm still doing the work with incarcerated men and women. So I hope that you'll understand why I'm so devoted to it by the time you see all of the work I have to show you. Just a word about why I'm doing this work. I feel this is my component toward the battle against mass incarceration. Part of that battle has to be lowering the rates of recidivism so we don't keep putting people back inside, and that they, in some way, I endeavor to change their thinking so that when they leave prison, they have changed. They have more autonomy, more self-confidence, and actually the desire to do good and to create beauty. So the lower arrow is forward. Okay, one of the first prisons I worked at, this is Joseph Harp Correctional Center in Lexington, Oklahoma. This was my first opportunity to work with incarcerated people. I didn't really have any training, and I didn't know what to expect. I've been making art since I was a small child, and my degrees are in art and art education. And I wasn't told what to expect. I figured there would be some tattoo art, maybe some awkward portraits of famous people, and that would be it. So I was quite mistaken, and I can't get used to this. Nope, okay. So one of the first men to walk into this class, about 12 men were selected to join the art class. This is Braulio Diaz. There hadn't been an art program in the Oklahoma State prisons for many, many years, and Braulio entered the class on the first day with an armload of drawings. This is one of them. He had been in for 15 years. I had been trained in a very academic and conventional way to be a painter, and I had never seen anything like this. So I realized immediately that I would not continue, I would not teach art in the ways in which I was taught, because what Braulio demonstrated to me was that there was a source inside of him that was supplying this beauty and sweetness and peacefulness and innovation that I had not come across or had not seen, witnessed with my own eyes. So I then determined that it would be accessing this source from each individual that I worked with, and that it still is my primary goal. So the way I see myself these days is like an excavator digging for gold. And what I do with each person that I work with is find a way through all the old ideas, the negative self-images, and all of the baggage that people come into the room with, and to allow this source to become manifest in the way that it became manifest for Braulio. Envelope art is a traditional art form in prison, and you can figure out why, because they can decorate the envelope and send it home. And I just wanted to show you Braulio's envelope so you can see again this mysterious event is that this man who was in prison for 15 years with no window in his cell, no visitors, he didn't read, he didn't study, all he did was paint. And here again you can see this sweet invention, these characters, and this beauty. So to me this represents a mystery, and did then and does today. I'm showing you here that in spite of the fact that prison is a dehumanizing, awful, ugly, terrible environment, that the people who live there maintain a sense of humor and sometimes a sense of dignity. So this is just an example of a joke, stay off of our cloud, referring to their tight, very tight and unpleasant quarters. This, I took this picture one day in Walpole Maximum Security in Massachusetts, where there was an open press day. I just wanted to give you an idea of the confinement that people live in. This, however, is a pretty luxurious cell compared to most that I've seen, because it was repainted and cleaned up for the camera. And also, we're just looking at the cell of one person, which is also a very rare event. So you can get an idea of how people live and compare them to the beauty of the artwork. I'm showing you here how crucial art is. What I discovered early on is that almost everyone in prison is making art or buying it. So what I mean by buying is that there's a lot of bartering going on. And if you are an artist, not even a good artist, if you draw anything or you make objects, first of all, the artist has quite a bit of stature in prison, which is contrary to what we see in the movies most of the time. But the artists are quite sought after, and they engender a great deal of respect and admiration. And there are, in a way, two kinds of art that happen in prison. One is commercial art, which is what we see on the outside. These artists have learned to do a few things that are popular with the population in which they live, and so they stick to those subjects. And then there are the madly creative artists, and sometimes the people who have the opportunity to join an art program. I'm just showing you this cell so you can see that this is from 1983 in Oklahoma. I don't think there are any prisons anymore where the inhabitants are able to paint on the walls, but that's what happened in this case. So then the next inhabitant of the cell put a sticker in the tiger's mouth which says, "Jesus loves you," somewhat mitigating the ferocity of the tiger. And there's a small painting next to the TV set which this person bartered for, and it illustrates the sense of being a martyr to their situation. I haven't really seen much of this sort of subject matter over the years, over the 34 years. because generally I discourage the expression of victimization because I don't want that to be a person's entire identity. And then on the television set, you can see a kind of a multi-frame stand. And that points to the fact that when a person, and you can imagine yourself being separated from the people that you care about for 15 years or 20 years or 25 years, then you get a snapshot of someone that you love. The photographs become almost sacred. They're very important, very significant. And so the art form of frame making has arisen, and people make frames out of anything they can get their hands on. So in this case, the frame stand was made from pebbles in the prison yard. This is a hobby shop in an Oklahoma prison. When I started working in Oklahoma, I met a warden by the name of Jack Cowley, with whom I'm still in touch. He was and still is the most progressive head of a prison that I've ever met. And he had a very strong belief that when you see a man who has made art, that he stands up straighter, that he's cleaner, he says good morning to people. So what Jack did in this particular prison was to open up hobby shops and painting studios for the men who lived there. In this case, we're seeing the hobby shop of two men who made frames out of simply rolling paper up to the size and dimensions of a drinking straw, and you just dip them in paint and get a beautiful marbleized effect. And so they're making the frames from those stalks of painted paper. The object in the middle of the slide is a cuckoo clock that is made from toothpicks. Just about everything I'm showing you in the beginning is work that it's indigenous work that comes from their kind of folk arts that happen in prison that you can define the same way you would define other folk arts. They are made from the materials at hand, which in this case are mostly recycled materials. And they are passed along, not from generation to generation, but from inmate to inmate. So the art is a thriving marketplace in prison. Here's a frame made from toothpicks. This frame by Jose Rodriguez is made from potato chip bags. What happens is the artist goes around the cell block and has people, asks them not to throw away their potato chip bags. They turn them inside out, wash and dry them, and then they learn this manner of weaving paper, which many people have told me they learned as children, say in summer camp. And it's a very popular method because you can use almost any kind of paper to create objects. And also, this is a way for incarcerated people to stay in touch with their ethnicity. What Jose said about this, I make a lot of frames for people here. Nobody showed me how to do it. One night I thought in my bedroom, how can I do something new? This is for pictures of 5 grandchildren. It is my heritage. You go into a Puerto Rican house, you see many things crafted by the people. Also, the pom-poms on the baby shoes were made from unraveling the colored bands of sports socks. So these baby shoes are enormously popular. It shows the softer side of a person who is incarcerated. And the pom-poms, again, were made from unraveling socks. I included the ramen noodle packaging so that you can see how much care this artist put into using the logo as part of the design. If you could look inside of these, you would see pasta immersed in tomato sauce, and that makes for the coloring of the lining of the baby shoes. Here is Leland Dodd. Leland Dodd is serving life without possibility of parole for conspiracy to traffic in marijuana. I met him in 1983, and he's still inside. I pulled his picture up off the internet, and he's quite a very, very old man. He learned how to do this from a cellmate who was released 2 weeks later after he taught Leland Dodd how to make this. I do not believe what I did rates life without parole. I'm nonviolent. I didn't even have a pocket knife. They let murderers and rapists out every day. Who are you more afraid of, me or them? This is another folk art in prison, soap carving. Many people carve with their small fingernails, which some people grow long in order to scoop powdered cocaine. Sometimes they use a paper clip. Sometimes they use a sewing needle if they can get it. And again, there's a certain limited repertoire of subject matter. This is a commercial piece, and it's very popular. It's a little jewelry box shaped like a treasure chest. There are ways in prison where you can pass something like this along to your family. You cannot just hand it over because it might have all kinds of drugs or some other contraband in them. So the person who made this leaves it with an officer, and then later his or her visitor will pick it up, take it home, and it will hold a couple pairs of earrings. People make these over and over and over again because we have to realize when you come to prison, this is a very frightening new life, and people look around to try to figure out how to negotiate what may be the rest of their life or maybe many, many years. They look around and almost everyone is drawing or creating objects. So people imitate each other, they teach each other how to do this. It is not particularly creative, but I think it's very important because it's a positive, productive way in which they interact with each other and spend their time. And it is certainly the opposite of violent behavior. So envelope art is another traditional prison art form where people decorate the envelopes before they send them home, so their family can know how they feel and what's going on. These envelopes are made by a commercial envelope artist. Maybe he charged us, say, a 6-pack of Pepsi as the cost of this envelope. So the buyer goes to his or her commissary, uses their account to get the Pepsi, hands it over to the artist. The artist invites the person into his or her cell, opens the locker, and there are all the samples to choose from. You can see some of the most popular imagery that is repeated forever: hearts, roses. The frog, I believe, is the mascot of the country of Puerto Rico. The sort of a companion art form to envelope art is handkerchief art. And in almost every prison, you can buy a nice cotton handkerchief in the commissary. They're about 16 inches square, and they make a great surface for ballpoint pen drawing, for colored pencils, for acrylic paints even. You see here again, this is very sentimental. The popularity of handkerchiefs lies in the fact, of course, that you can get this nice drawing surface, but also you can fold these up and send them home. This is a very important piece of making art in prison. There have been a lot of studies that show a much lower rate of recidivism when the person who is incarcerated can keep a connection with their family. So it's really important to create this beautiful work in order to send it home. And again, you can see here the hearts and roses and the sentimental communication that this person is going to send home. Here's another handkerchief drawing. The artist here is George Dyson. And this is kind of the artwork that I expected to see, which is similar to tattoo flash and biker art. Of course, it's a very beautiful carefully done example is simply ballpoint pen on a cotton handkerchief. Another effect that a single person doing art in prison has is the effect on the staff and the correctional officers. So what George told me when he handed this over was that he said the COs, which is their short name for correctional officer, the COs think we're less than they are. They get surprised when they see the work. They see us in a different light. Hey, you got talent, they say. And this man told me this story I want to tell you because it's beautiful and it really speaks to the fact of being able to send these objects home. This is from a man who came to one of my lectures. He's not an incarcerated person. I had a very dear roommate when I lived in California, Marvin Cruz. Growing up, he never had his father due to his being incarcerated in a federal penitentiary. He stressed he would never talk to him again. But Marvin's father would send artwork on handkerchiefs all the time, which told stories. My friends and I were extremely impressed with the level of talent that went into his art. And we could see slowly it was breaking into Cruz's unforgiving soul. Then finally, after several years of refusing to talk to his father, I see Cruz up in the middle of the night drawing his own picture, which he intended to send to this father that he had not spoken to in over a decade. Here's a very good example of an important combination of art forms. People say there's a new baby in the family, and the family sends a snapshot of the baby into the prison to the incarcerated relative. That person enlarges the snapshot into a drawing or commissions another person to do the drawing. Then, in this case, the drawing was done on a handkerchief. Then the drawing itself is sent home. The family frames it, maybe hangs it up over the mantle, takes a picture of the framed artwork, sends this picture of the framed artwork back to the person who is incarcerated, and this cycle keeps the connection between the inmate and the family. Now, of course, I did see plenty of tattoo imagery. That's what I expected to see. It is forbidden to do tattooing in prisons, but from what I hear, I'm not there in the middle of the night, but I hear plenty of stories, and what it seems that tattooists keep plying their trade even when they're incarcerated. So this man had a simple bracelet tattoo done in prison to mark the beginning of his incarceration. And he said, it's not that it's a good thing, but I wanted some mark of the beginning of my new life. This is Stephen Colley. He's been working on this body shirt for the years, many years that he's been in a Connecticut prison. He is a connoisseur of the imagery of the Oriental iconography you can see. He told me that the red coloring comes from Robitussin cough syrup. The green coloring is from Prel shampoo. If I had an extra hour, I would tell you all the recipes I've heard for black ink. My first experience at Joe Harp, the prison I showed you in the beginning, was to bring in a jar of India ink for two men who were doing pen and ink drawings. After class, we locked the art supplies up in a cabinet. When I came back the next week, we found the cabinet had been broken into. What was missing was, first of all, a can of spray varnish, which the officer told me was used for a small party by some of the men who lived there. And of course, the ink was gone. So, still being very naive at the time, I went out and bought another jar of India ink and brought it in. And this time I said to the men, look, don't take your eyes off of this, please. In the blink of an eye, it was gone. And later that day, one of the men came up to me and said, "Lady, you have been a boon to the tattoo industry here. Because this real ink is worth hundreds of dollars on the inside." And let's see, I'll tell you one quick story that I'm sure was embellished for its dramatic effect. But what the man said to me was, you burn the pages of a Bible. That's because they're very thin. The bits of carbon float up in the air, and you catch them on the cover of a Playboy magazine. Then they're scraped off, mixed with toothpaste, and this is what is injected for black tattoo ink. That's just one little tale I've been told. So these men are showing us their jailhouse tattoos. They're very blurry, first of all because of the instability of whatever they're using as ink. Secondly, they make a jailhouse tattoo gun, which generally is a Walkman. The wire of a Walkman is run through the empty shaft of a ballpoint pen. And the needle is made from various things. For example, a paper clip that is sharpened on the cinder block wall. So you can see you can't get a very fine line or design from that. But these men seem pretty happy about it. So enter the art program. What I've shown you so far has arisen without any art program and continues to be done in every prison throughout the facility. I'm showing you this because I think it's very sweet, like a photograph you might have had taken of your middle school graduating class, something like that. These were the men in one of my first classes in Oklahoma. You can see they're all different shapes and sizes, and very, very happy to be part of the art class. All the classes and all the facilities that I've worked in 34 years, there has been a very long waiting list of people trying to get into the art class, which is to my advantage because everyone pretty much does whatever I ask, no matter how challenging, no matter how frightening. They want to stay there, and they're happy to be there. This is a collaborative piece we did. After 5 years in Oklahoma, I was ready to leave Oklahoma and wasn't sure where to go, and visited a few friends who lived in Massachusetts. Then I liked it there, and also discovered that there had not been an art program in the Massachusetts state prisons for many, many years. So it took me about a year of emails and phone calls and visits to harangue the Department of Corrections into hiring me, to finding the funding and hiring me. And it was a full-time job with benefits with the Department of Corrections, which is I promise you, a very rare event. So in this case, we did this collaboration after I had been there for a couple of years. Almost every space that I'm given for art programs is a multi-purpose space. And you can see this class was held in the library. Most of the men are showing themselves straight on, but a few people are trying to tell us something about themselves. For example, the man in the bubble was a sex offender. And so he's showing us how he was ostracized by the other people who lived there. I am the one carrying the multi-bags. I'm not proud to say that it took me a couple years to realize that I could use a luggage carrier to take my bags in and out, because after those early experiences, I was reluctant to leave very much of value in the prison during the week. And another thing that this picture reminds me of, this pretty large painting, we were permitted to bring acrylic paint at this facility. And we had an art show there. I remember one man who was hanging a painting up on the wall for the exhibit which was very beautiful, and he had struggled with for many, many weeks, maybe months. He was very impressed with it himself, and he said to me, he said, you know, it's easy to do a bad thing. It's hard to do a good thing. And I know exactly what he meant, and I thought that was an important statement and an important realization. When people come to the art class, I first of all tell them that it is their responsibility here to create beauty. It's not about making you feel better. We're not talking about healing you. It's to create beauty. And I have found that that high goal then includes all the ways in which a person's thinking can change and their self-image can change. One of the first things I have everyone do, and they have to do it continuously, is to doodle. The reason is that if you learn how to doodle, which means you find a way to put your mind elsewhere so that you do not engage with your hand and your pen with your mind. Because the conditioned mind is always telling you, you can't do this, this is stupid, this is crazy. And I want people to learn to trust an unseen guide in moving their hand. Not that the doodles themselves are finished pieces, but it's more of a stance that I want people to take so that they don't have to go back into this file cabinet and repeat everything they've seen and everything they've done before. This is a drawing that someone created after the assignment to doodle, and they have to doodle every week. And I just think it's a great example. This could be a contemporary trained artist doing an abstract piece of work, which just came out of him. It's different, it's not repetitive. It has some humor to it, and yet there's no real subject matter that we can relate to. This is Charles Mosby. I met Charles when I first came to Massachusetts and worked with him for 5 years. He joined the art class because he had been in prison for almost 20 years and he felt that he was going crazy. So he just had this urge to join the art class to help his sanity. And when he first created these creatures that you see in the kind of perimeter of the painting, he felt, okay, this is proof that I'm losing it, because he had never seen anything like it and couldn't relate it to anything he knew. So I brought in some work by Paul Klee and Joan Miro and some other artists who were working in a similar way. And I said to him, Charles, the source of their art is the very same source that is the root of what you are creating. Of course, I said, these people have had different lives, different advantages, but nevertheless, this beauty and invention is coming from the same capacity that all of us humans share. So he believed me because I believe that that's true. And then he was able to relax into creating the beautiful work that he made. So this is called Prison Art Class, and you can see all the delight and surprise that this experience was delivering to him. Here's what Charles called this is a statement painting, and it's called Drug Usage Equals Enslavement, Imprisonment, Death. It is an example. He's showing us the demons of the night and his addiction to alcohol and to crack cocaine. He said, I am a wiser person now. I no longer run from goodness. I've shown the world how evil I can be, and now I want to show the goodness in me. This goodness was always in me. He said this. This goodness was always in me, and this is exactly the message that I endeavor to communicate to everyone I work with. This goodness was always in me, and I drowned it with alcohol. My incarceration is hard, but it is not wasteful. I will come out of here with compassion. Here's Charles' painting. It's called Uncasia, which he said doesn't mean anything. And again, what this tells me is that there's a source of pure joy. Here's a man who's been in almost 20 years. I cannot describe to you fully what it's like to be in this colorless, dreadfully ugly, confined, dehumanizing environment. And yet this source of joy is untouched by all of that, and he is able to manifest it in this beautiful work. So I don't know how many of you know about the for-profit prisons that are happening all over the country. Large corporations are contracting with state systems that are overcrowded for 200, 300 beds in an old jail, for example, that they purchased and cleaned up a little bit. And Charles was one of the people who was sent from a Massachusetts prison. They selected the best behaved prisoners to send out. He was shipped from a Massachusetts prison with 200 other inmates, and they were sent to an old jail in Odessa, Texas. He was so far from his family that they couldn't even afford phone calls, and he was there for 2 years. There were no programs there. He was not allowed out into fresh air for about 1.5 years, yet he was looking through the bars at them walking and airing the dogs, the prison dogs. And then he sent these 2 drawings to me and said, "Each day that goes by, I find myself totally amazed that this jail is so cruel. I have been learning to draw with M&Ms and Skittles. I use a matchstick and the paper falls apart, so only 1 try in 12 comes out. Here's something I have done. I met Ronnie White. We have some of Ronnie's work in the show here. Ronnie was what was known as a pen man. He was a virtuoso with a ballpoint pen. His work was very popular. He's still incarcerated. I met him in 1987. And he supports himself with his artwork by day, his commercial work. And at night, he does his own drawings in his cell and believes thoroughly that there are spirits of the night come to him and guide his hand. And this is a self-portrait that he's done. You can see the effect of doodling in this. And so this is called Dream Time. I don't know how much you can see. There are faces and figures woven into the background. One thing that Ronnie has done most of the time was to show good and evil in his artwork. And here we see a self-portrait of him in his bed. Then the good side is in the foreground and the evil side is over there by the toilet. Dreamtime was a response to all the hostility, the dead air filled with hatred, the spitefulness, the spit and filth covering the walls, the roaches all over the place. Ronnie is a heroin addict. He was never treated, and he's a nonviolent offender. Here's another. He would get out and right away be offered his drug of choice and was soon incarcerated again for robbery in order to pay for his drugs. So this is another prison and this drawing. You can see again the figure of goodness, the figure of Christ by the bars looking over him. I wanted to show you Ronnie's skill with the realistic drawing. He's made Christmas cards and other kinds of cards and portraits for people, and still doing that in order to pay for his commissary. So he never studied art, but he had quite a lot of skill in drawing realistically. Occasionally I hear from people who are writing books on the subject that has to do with incarceration, and they're looking for illustrations. So in this case, they selected Ronnie's drawing for the cover. It's a book about violent offenders, and I made sure that when he got credit on the back of the book, that it mentioned that he's a nonviolent offender. I think this piece is in the show, and this is called Blending In. And this is about being institutionalized, because every time he came out, he was unable to cope and unable to live his life, and immediately found himself back inside. He said, "I know deep in my soul I have the makings of a master in my blood, and it may take a lifetime to perfect my talent. I realize this because when I'm working, sometimes I get these excitable feelings, like I'm really onto something, and the path is easy to follow. It's not my mind that's giving me these messages. It's my soul. I want my work to be recognized for what it truly is, as pure as snow." Here's another example of a man who had been incarcerated for close to 30 years, Donald Frazier, and he paid for his commissary by doing these beautiful flower cards. These are greeting cards that people commission and they buy from him. He joined the art class, he told me, because he needed refreshing. He had been for so long making these cards over and over and over again. So I worked with him on the issue of development and challenge and depth, and he continued expanding on this floral theme. This is one of his portraits. You know, the creative energy is self-propelling. Once we give it space to explode, it keeps going. It has its own energy, and it energizes the person. They don't have to sit down each time and try to figure out what to do next. I don't exactly understand this painting, but I just wanted you to see the humor, the good humor, and how he did keep the floral leaves and such in the figure's face. And he's obviously a Red Sox fan.
Phyllis, we're going to have to finish up. A class will be coming.
I'm sorry?
We need to finish up soon. A class will be
Oh, I do? Oh my goodness. Okay. Arthur Cagney. Oh no, this is Walpole, the outer perimeter. And this is the collaboration we did at Walpole. Here's Arthur doing his painting. I would quote Pete Mondrian, "The artist's position is humble. He is essentially a vessel." And Arthur says, "I view my paintings as just incidents and people that I met in my life. It's like someone that sings in the shower. It is not my view of myself that I'm a real artist." This is Prison Visit, where Arthur visited his father by waving to the window of his cell from the street. This is called Hidden Side. Oh no, this is Arthur's cartoon. An endangered species and a not very bright correctional officer. The Neighborhood. And this is Walpole, 1972. When the couple of the cell blocks were out of control, the guards couldn't get in, the men couldn't get out. Oh, and this piece was purchased at the time by the man who was the director of the Museum of American Folk Art. I'll go through the rest of them. This is Larry Mox. Violence, punishment stimulates violence. Lenore Scott, Prison Life. Crystal Stimson, this is what it's like to be incarcerated. I'm sorry to rush this, but we started rather late. I just want to read, this is also an expression of being institutionalized and blending in. This is the belt my father hit me with. This is the closet he locked me in. This is the stove he burnt me on. Here I am, kneeling on the little carpet with the tacks sticking up through it, balancing a heavy grindstone on my head. And the title, she said, is Because I Love You. That's what he told me. This is called I Remember Papa, and it's an embroidered tapestry about 4 inches square by Ray Matterson. John Harvey. John Harvey. Anti-drug statement by John Harvey. Here's a soap carver who's more creative than the commercial side of it. And this is his replica of his cell made from soap. It's about 2 inches tall. This is about 1 inch tall. It's soap, carved soap. Arthur Kegney's sculpture on a book cover. Nelson Molina, this is about a jailbreak. The men are impaled on the razor wire. The other one has died on the cement. And the passersby are paying no attention. It's called No One Cares. Toilet paper sculpture by Keith Dwy. Released by Death. This is toilet paper with acrylic paint. This is my favorite thing, maybe. This is toilet paper for the cliffs, for the mountains, and the faces, which are very good portraits, were modeled from toothpaste by Greg Maddow. Here's Braulio's large painting. You saw him in the beginning, and I found a great big window shade in a dumpster and gave it to him to paint on. It's called Condominium. So this is Anthony. I'm introducing you to a couple other artists. I don't have time to tell you this whole story, but this is Anthony's self-portrait. Here's Cyrus. Larry White, this is his self-portrait. Larry's been in for 30 years, and this is his self-portrait and the portrait of his cell. Wilmer Carabello, this is called, you can see the doodling influence, this is called Freedom Within the Walls. And Lionel showed me this painting. This was the last one he painted before he was released. So I asked him, Lionel, what will have changed in your life when you get out from the fact that you having been made art? And he said to me that, I have learned to exercise my gift. I will have a purpose. Whoops. I will exercise my gift. I will have a purpose. Okay, thank you. Sorry to rush.